That's it for today. My special guest has been Dr. Laurence Becker. Thank you for listening. This is Cactus Pryor saying we'll see you tomorrow. Laurence, I appreciate you coming on.
Well, it's good to be here.
You're a fascinating guest, and I'd sure like to get Richard Wawro on again. He really fascinates me. I don't understand it. I wish I could see these pictures through as he sees them through his eyes.
Well, we see so much depth here, and so much color, and so much shadow. He helps me see more. That's the amazing thing about his work.
Well, I just don't see how he's able to see this. I mean, you tell me that he's legally blind, and what is it the so-called experts say about his intelligence, that he has an IQ of 30 and the mind of a 6-year-old? That doesn't figure.
No, Cactus, it really doesn't to me either. Some have said he has a hopelessly incomplete mind. Another writer called him just a human robot cranking out pictures. Can you imagine that? But you really have to judge him for yourself.
You know, Laurence, I'm planning a trip to Great Britain this spring. You think there's any chance that I might go up to Edinburgh and meet Richard and his family there?
Why not? You know, if you really want to understand his art, Cactus, you have to start with Richard's relationship with his family, especially now with his father. Richard's mother died in 1979, and since then, his father, Ted, has been Richard's constant companion. Ted tries to attend to every detail of Richard's life, from clothing to food to recreation. He's done all these things because he really believes Richard can't be taught to do them for himself.
What does Richard like to do?
Well, besides drawing, which takes up most of his time, he loves to walk and go on outings. When friends or relatives visit, the family often goes to the Forth Road Bridge outside Edinburgh. Ted was a civil engineer and helped work on the structure, one of the longest suspension bridges in Europe. Richard has visited the site many times since it was under construction. With his binoculars, Richard seems to be constantly searching for new images. He's like a blotter soaking up every detail, visual elements that might show up even years later in one of his paintings.
So you're telling me that Richard has an extremely curious mind, that he records details for later recall and use. You say he likes to be with other people. Well, that doesn't sound like a severely retarded person to me.
No, it doesn't. Try not to have too many preconceptions about Richard. Keep your mind open. Watch Richard for yourself. You may find that he's almost totally aware of everything around him, that he uses all of his senses. You'll want to examine the content of each picture. You'll no doubt discover that Richard loves to travel. You'll notice that his pictures are filled with trains and boats and cars and buses and spaceships and airplanes. Richard's pictures have appeared in exhibitions in such faraway places as London and Paris and Krakow and New York and Atlanta and Austin, Texas and Maui, Hawaii. Richard personally has opened each of these exhibitions. He's always ready to go on tour. Just the sight of a plane taking off or the roar of the engines makes Richard dance with delight.
Did Richard ever go to school?
Well, Richard still goes to an occupation center each morning. Since he was 6, he's gone every day to the center where special education teachers have tried to teach him to read and write. As he's gotten older, he's changed centers, and now he goes to an adult center called Clemerston.
Well, do you mean he hasn't learned to read yet?
His learning has been primarily visual, not from textbooks. In fact, his teachers don't believe Richard has made any significant progress toward reading in all the years they've worked with him. they don't think he recognizes the alphabet. As far as Richard's writing goes, when he's asked to autograph a picture, he simply turns it over and draws a small sketch on the back.
Has he received any speech therapy?
Very little, and that may be his greatest handicap. Although Richard began drawing when he was about 3 1/2, he didn't speak out loud until he was 11. Since then, he's had trouble speaking because his teeth are very bad. I'm afraid many people just stop listening.
Did he receive any other training at the center?
Well, mostly Richard uses the center as a place to draw. He doesn't have much time for the other trainees at the center either, because he's an artist and feels that his time belongs to his art. Richard doesn't talk about his creative process, though, so the only way to understand it is to observe the process carefully.
It's really quite simple. Whenever I'm with him, I just need to keep my eyes wide open. So plans were arranged, and I found myself at Waverley Station in Scotland, entering a country and a city, an environment of intense visual stimulation, of color, of sound, of movement. I was also entering a complex cultural heritage, Poland from Richard's father, Scotland from Richard's mother. As we drove home past the ancient buildings along Princess Street, I began to get an idea of some of the influence on Richard's art, the Sir Walter Scott Monument, the careful landscaping, the images from Scottish mythology like the unicorn, the Scottish style of transit, double-decker buses. We passed the museums of art and history and finally saw the magnificent Castle of Edinburgh sitting high on a hill overlooking the proud city. I flinched as Ted insisted on driving on the wrong side of the road, but we quickly and safely made it home to Craig Crook Avenue. We'd barely arrived when Richard also returned home from drawing at the center. Richard obviously remembered visiting me in Texas. It was time to renew our magical relationship. I'm going to make it disappear in my arm.
Right.
All right, watch this is magic now. Here we go.
Here we go, no.
Put it in my arm.
Yes.
And now it is gone.
Let's go.
Where did it go?
Yes.
Did it go right over there? Look over there. It went out of your ear.
Yes.
There you are. It's magic.
It's magic.
Thank you very much. Let's give him a hand. After the show, Richard immediately went back to work on a picture. He uses the unlikely medium of crayons, familiar enough to children, but almost ignored by a serious artist. He works close to the surface with his eyes just inches away. Nevertheless, he still gets perfect perspective. Happiness for Richard appears to be boxes and boxes of Caran d'Ache Neocolor crayons made in Switzerland and kept right at hand. He never sharpens his crayons, but uses the edge of the crayon for his precise lines. Drawings may have half a dozen layers of color on each, achieving a deep richness as the colors blend and then reflect light together. While Richard created, Ted and I savored the sunlight and talked about Richard's work. He wasn't an easy child, born with cataracts in both eyes, surgery done almost at birth. He was constantly moving and slept only infrequently. Then when he was 3, he was labeled severely retarded.
His IQ was diagnosed at what?
Well, actually, it was diagnosed at 30, but neither my wife nor myself thought that that was the right judgment. For one thing, when the doctor psychiatrist came to Teaport to examine Richard, my wife offered her help, to communicate between the doctor and Richard, but she said, "Oh no, I'll manage myself." So my wife doubted, so did I, that Richard will never carry out her instructions simply because he will never understand those instructions. That's what probably happened. She asked Richard to do this, to do that. Richard did nothing, or next to nothing, simply because she was a stranger to him. His reaction was really negative. However, she was an official. We had to accept her judgment.
Ted showed me the scrapbook reproductions of Richard's first published drawing.
That was the picture of boats. Richard always was fond of drawing boats, and we weren't surprised that that kind of picture got the first prize.
And he drew this when he was
1962.
When he was 10 years old.
Yes.
Ted also told me of Richard's early encounter with Polish art professor
Marian Bosciuszko in 1964, when Richard was only 12 years old. Thunderstruck was the word the professor used to describe his initial reaction. The professor urged the Wawros to do everything they could possibly do to develop Richard's talent. Until the professor's visit, Richard's drawings had been a rather private obsession. Now, through encouragement, his drawing has become a profession. Ted showed me the film of Richard's first London exhibition, organized by the professor at the YMCA Gallery. The British Minister of Education, one Mrs. Margaret Thatcher, opened the exhibition. She has called Richard one of her favorite artists and has 4 of his pictures.
How did your wife's death affect Richard's artwork?
Even Richard realized, that his mommy probably would never recover. So he was leaning more and more towards me. He went to his art quite soon after her death.
Ted, do you remember the picture that Richard painted?
Oh yes, I remember quite well. It was called Pembrokeshire Coastline Weir, with a beautiful lighthouse on it. I don't know why he actually drew that particular picture, but it was one of the better pictures, really. That means, for me, it meant that Richard settled down nicely to his art. And that was the most important thing for me.
At the age of 8, Richard drew on the wallpaper when he exhausted his own supply of drawing paper. He even colored his dad's engineering drawings. Now there are pictures everywhere, in the bedrooms, in the living room, in the dining room. There are stacks of newly completed pictures waiting to be matted, cataloged, and exhibited. Even the stairway leading to the attic is lined with early pictures, each one displaying a consistent developing style.
This is enough work here for 10 art galleries.
As I discovered literally hundreds of early treasures, some such as the bounding kangaroo dating back to 1962 when Richard was 10 years old, I was struck by the evidence of caring and devotion of his parents.
All of these framed and matted. Who did this? Did you do this?
Well, I did that because to ask the framers to do that for me, it would cost me a fortune.
Yeah.
So I had to do all I could, really, with my own hands.
So you've literally framed and matted hundreds of them, huh?
Hundreds of them, yes.
Well, I can't get over the number of them. This is it, surely, huh?
Oh, no, I have some more pictures if you like to know.
You
I
got
have
more?
another section of the attic.
Show me.
Oh, yes, please, come in.
Okay.
Yes, please. Well, this is Michael's room, my younger son's room, but I've discovered that I have more space on the other side of this house, so I cut out the wall to make room for more pictures.
It looks like a secret vault in there.
Yes, just walk in and see.
You won't lock me in, will you?
No, I won't lock you in.
Another whole cache of his works.
Meanwhile, Richard was downstairs finishing his latest creation. He has added new details, more shadows and shrubbery. He's finished the sky and even added a telephone wire. It was Greenville, an Australian resort town. Using a soft white cloth, Richard rapidly buffed the surface, giving the picture a characteristic glassy shine. Then I saw the family ritual, a celebration. Ted held up Richard's hand like a Polish boxing champion winning a fight.
Good. One. Niech żyje, niech się wódki napije. London to Greenland. London to Greenland. Clever boy.
Every artist should have such an immediate reward.
Look at this. Pakistan, France, Africa, Indian Ocean, Bombay, and Greenland. And Greenland, Australia. A lot of time. 4:55. 4:55 local time. The warm winter, 10 degrees. The warm winter. That's a lovely thing. It's a clever boy. Clever boy.
Actually, Ted also gives Richard a small incentive. For each picture, a pound or two to buy books or music. The actual sales from Richard's paintings go to his trust fund. Richard can be self-supporting, a taxpayer with a job he loves.
There you are. Say thank you. Oh, yes, that's it. Another £2. That's great, that's great. Lovely.
Later that day, Richard showed me his valuable reference library, his National Geographic magazines.
Do you get your ideas for some of your pictures from these magazines?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Look here, Richard. Now, here's one with a lot of flags. Can you tell me what countries these flags belong to? This one here, for example.
Brazil.
Brazil, and what's this one?
British standard flag.
British standard flag. And what about this one right here?
Australia.
Australia, that's right. What about
He has a phenomenal memory for places, dates, and pictures. He can remember when and where he finished most of his drawings and can calculate the year since that time.
Now this one, let's see, Richard. This date is 1951.
1951.
Okay, now how old would this magazine be now?
Almost 30.
Almost 30 years old?
30 years old.
30 years old,
30
exactly.
years old.
Okay, let me try you on this one now.
In the 70s.
This one is 1979. How old would it be?
Almost 2.
2 years, that's right.
He was right every time. What else have the experts missed? They've overlooked his incredible visual literacy and extraordinary memory. I wondered, is Richard literate in the other arts as well?
We're going to church today?
Yes.
To St. Giles Cathedral?
Yes, please.
Oh, this
St. Giles.
is organ music from
Yes.
St. Giles, huh?
St. Giles.
The organ in St. Giles Cathedral, Edinburgh. Would you play this for me?
Yes, please.
This is recorded in the church.
Yes.
Andrew Armstrong, organ. Play that for me, please. This church is over 900 years old, Richard.
Yes.
That's almost as old as I am. You know that? And we'll get in the mood for the church. You know what that is?
Yes.
What is that? What is that instrument?
Organ.
Organ. And what kind of an organ?
The big juice organ.
Yeah, pipe organ.
Pipe organ.
Yeah. Do you like that type of music?
Yes. It's on Elgar. Neighbor June Elgar.
Elgar?
Number 1, Genie on 8, 9 minor. 8 minor.
A minor.
Yes.
By Elgar and A minor.
Yes.
I believe you're right, Richard.
Right again. Amazing. I suggested that Richard show me his favorite Edinburgh places, including the old cathedral. Richard's world delights him beyond words, especially a trip to the cassette shop or to his favorite bookseller. He makes friends easily wherever he travels, and he can be persuaded to exhibit his masterworks on the run. He loves to walk and talk, pausing when an image strikes him powerfully enough to discuss it and remember it. He knows the city's best legends, like the loyalty of Greyfriars Bobby, he's familiar with the same streets walked by Boswell, Alexander Graham Bell, and all the Scottish kings and queens. Throughout the city, there are pictures to be found everywhere and carefully examined, stored for later use. As I learned more, I questioned more. I had to go deeper, beneath the present. I wanted to travel to Fife, to Richard's birthplace in West Newport. I wanted to see the early homes where Richard had lived, to get a sense of the place and time of his beginnings. I wanted to talk to his mother's closest friends who were there from the very start. I soon found myself in New Scone near Perth, talking with Mrs. Rose Kinievich.
Mrs. Kinievich, you were the godmother of Richard.
Yes, exactly. I was very proud of it. And I remember very well, it was a sunny day, and I was carrying Richard. He was a beautiful little baby, but I remember looking at his eyes. I told myself that I never share that thought, that these eyes are not going to see.
You thought he would be blind.
I thought at the time that he would be blind.
Now, early in life,
Richard was rather uncontrollable, I'm told, and was extremely active. When he came to visit you, what was it like in your home?
It was things which helped Richard, music, and very serious music. It was Bach, Beethoven, I remember. When he was hearing the music, it was much easier to control him.
Tell me about Olive. What sort of a person was she?
She was a wonderful person. I felt so close to her. I loved her really like a sister from the very start. But she was a fierce mother, too. Fierce mother, defending her little cub, you know.
In the garden in Taport, where Richard played as a child, I talked with the Wawro's neighbor, Mrs. John Curry. She kept Richard in her home with her own children when Richard's mother returned to teaching. It was in Mrs. Curry's kitchen that Richard first discovered a piece of chalk.
Mrs. Curry, when did you first meet Richard?
Oh, when he was 10 months old. That would be what year? He's now 29.
Yeah.
54, 53.
What did he look like as a baby?
Oh, he's a lovely baby. Fair, golden hair, blue eyes.
And understand that you used to bring him out in this beautiful backyard and lie him on the grass?
Yes, he used to lie there and look at the sun all day, practically. It was amazing, his eyes, how he could look at the bright light.
But he could look at the bright
He
sun?
was looking at the bright sun, straight on, which no one else, none of my family could do, or anybody, I don't suppose. About 4 or 5, we gave him the blackboard and he used to draw pictures, but he immediately rubbed it out again.
So you were in at the very beginning,
Oh, the very beginning
of his drawing career.
Richard, yes. And that was amazing, because my family had a blackboard, but we never thought he would draw. But one day I said, why not draw me something? And he did.
What?
A fireplace, and he put his hands up to let me know it was fire. We have an open fire in the living room, and that's what it was.
Were you surprised that with his limited vision that he could have seen these things?
Oh, very surprised. Mr. Wawro said it was wishful thinking on my part, actually. I went to Lawcross and told him, and he said, never, Mrs. Curry. Richard couldn't do that. You're only making this up. I said, I'm not. You see, I had nothing to show because he rubbed it out.
But that was long before he drew these cartoons on paper.
Then we went on to lovely Lakeside Estate, where we met Mrs. Molly Leishman, Richard's first teacher.
He was 6 years old, I think, when I first met Richard. He came with his mother to the occupational centre, and she wanted some sort of education for a little boy. And up to then she had met with no response at all. No one would help. What I noticed most about her was the fact that this had not made her bitter.
You made reference in a letter to Dr. Becker that Richard was in pain. What did you mean by that?
There was something in his face, I don't know if you've seen it, something that made him look older than his years, a suffering. I was sure many of his mannerisms and his tantrums were caused by pain. He spun round and round. Spinning, yes. Really, he would have done justice to a belly dancer. He, went round and round and round. And he had a high-pitched scream. I can't explain it. I'd never heard it before. It was very high-pitched. It was so high-pitched that it did upset some of the children.
Both the spinning and the high-pitched scream indicate early autistic behaviors, but no one seemed to make the connection in Richard's case. Autism is not the same as mental retardation. In fact, an autistic person may be highly intelligent.
Did it ever come down to you saying, let's give him one more chance?
Oh, quite often. Quite often. Yes, really quite often. But then, you see, he was Richard. There was always this something that saved him in the end.
And then one day you put a crayon in his hand, did you not?
Yes, I did. This was a day I'll never forget. There was very little Richard would do. You couldn't get him to sit long enough to do anything. But this day I pinned a big sheet of card it was on his desk, and I got one of these, we called them jumbo crayons, big thick wax crayon, and it was red because the paper was white, and I thought, well, he'll see the red on the white. And I gave him the crayon, but he didn't want it, and to the grizzle he always gave it, it wasn't anything wanted. And I said, come on, Richard, try. And the eventually I put it in his hand and I held his hand.
Let me ask you something, and I think this is rather important. Which hand did he take the crayon in?
The right hand.
The right hand?
Most definitely the right hand, yes. Because I was kneeling on the floor while he was sitting at his little desk, and I was at the side, and it was his right hand I covered.
You know that he now paints with his left hand.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me in the least, but he certainly started off with his right hand.
Okay, well, go ahead and continue your story.
Yes. Well, I made him make marks quite firmly. I made him sit, and he looked at it, you know, the way he does, from the side, his nose down on the paper. And I said, look, Richard, you've done that. See, you do it yourself. And he did. He started to do it. Then, eventually, he got that he would sit a little while each day with crayons, and he got another colour, and he would help himself, and he would do this scribbling, and really he began to get very interested. And this went over for quite a long spell, actually. But there was one day I went to see what he was doing. They always had their work pinned up on the wall because you had to encourage them. And this day I went to get Richard to pin it up on the wall. And I thought, no, you're seeing things. Can't be true, because there was a picture there. Now, it wasn't the usual picture, you know, with a ball for the head and a ball for the body and there's 4 little matchsticks for legs that you sometimes get, and you think it's wonderful you get from a handicapped child. It wasn't anything like that at all. And it wasn't just what we call a flash in the pan. He was making pictures. And it went on from there. You know, he really was. He was doing something that even a normal child of his age, a child that wasn't handicapped at all, couldn't have done.
These women were important to Richard, but it was his parents who met his day-to-day needs. They did not follow one doctor's advice to put Richard in a home and forget him. Olive said it might be all right for other people to send their children away, but not for her. I suddenly thought of Richard's pictures done after his mother's death. While she was critically ill in 1979, he made his first trip anywhere without his parents. It was a major turning point in his life with his younger brother Michael and his friend Stuart Murdoch. He traveled to New York to the International Special Olympics. Richard met many new faces. He saw new colors in people and compared suntans. Then he drew his perception. His mature realization that even if you have a distorted body, you too can be a Superman. Since his first trip to the States, the nature of the two brothers' relationships had deepened considerably, as Michael has continued to encourage Richard to take new and even bolder steps toward selfhood. So it seemed appropriate for us to go with Richard when Stuart took him for the weekend to visit Michael in Glasgow.
Ready to go?
Ready to go.
Good. Is your dad?
Hello, Stuart. Hello, come on.
Ted went to great lengths to explain to Stuart some of the careful planning necessary for any sort of trip.
One thing, because he is retarded, we have to take extra things, and he doesn't look after himself. Well, I have to look after him. And then because he's diabetic, I have to carry certain things which I have to have with me. That is why I always make a list, not to forget those essential things, you see.
I see.
Something like, for instance, I'll better take that box here. Well, this is injection kit. Richard gets injection every morning, you see. So that is very, very essential. In fact, I have to take some extras, extra insulin, extras, you know, surgical spirit, that kind of thing, just in case if I drop a bottle down on the floor, you see. I have to have something extra. That is a very, very essential thing. And then another essential thing is, you know, every day, twice, in fact, I have to test his urine, you know, for the amount of sugar in it, you see. So that is also a very important thing, which I also have to carry with me. And also little caps and bottles. There are two things which Richard usually carries with him. Earphones. He's very fond of music. So some people have radios of some sort, so all he does, not to disturb the household, he puts his earphones in and he supplies his own music. Those earphones usually one of those essentials. And above all, binoculars. We found, you know, that binoculars are very, very big help for Richard. Wherever he goes, whether he's on the plane, on the train, on the car, he always takes interest, gets interested in whatever is happening around him. Whether he sees animals on the fields or something else, he usually uses the thing.
Yes.
And if we travel at night, of course, he is fascinated by lights of oncoming cars and off-going cars, you know. So usually Richard carries his binoculars with him, always at the ready. So those things normally we take with us. That's about all. No, you better, okay? Richard, come on, say something. What about Richard? Are we going or not going? We're going.
Okay, you ready?
We'll go.
Right then, let's go.
Well, bye-bye, Richard.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. London. Bye-bye. You are going to leave Daddy behind you, so you have to... Michael will look after you, all right?
Yes.
For 2 days. And I hope you'll have a very nice time.
Yes.
Okay. And are you going to do any drawing?
Yes.
Just a small picture.
Small one.
Just a small
Come
one,
on,
yes.
I'd already noticed that Richard acts differently around different people. He seems to have learned quite well to fulfill the expectations others have for him. This journey to Glasgow will be a chance for me to watch him interact with a whole new group of people who may treat him with different expectations. I wonder how he'll react. Will he be outgoing? Will he show affection or other emotions? Will he talk about personal events, feelings or visions? Richard put on his seatbelt by himself and waved goodbye to his dad.
Well, there goes a girl and a half. She's got me going up and down. She's got me going up and down. Walking on the beaches, looking at the beaches. Well, I got the notion, girl, that you got some suntan lotion in that bottle of yours. Spread it all over my peeling skin, baby.
What are you listening to? What are you listening to?
Oh, the beaches.
Oh, the Stranglers?
Yes, Pamela.
Peaches?
Beaches.
You dancing to it?
Yes.
Right, very good.
Down on the beaches.
Have you brought any pictures?
Yes.
You brought any pictures to show me?
No, not yet.
Have you brought any pictures to show me, Richie?
After I'm finished.
But you have brought them?
Yeah.
That's good.
See all the beaches. Down on the
Richie, I've got your soup on next door, so once you finish, you know, come and have some soup when you're ready. Okay?
Right.
Richie, come and see the new television. My new flatmate Doogie brought it. It's real fancy. It's all remote control.
Of course, now we're looking forward to...
It works if you point it.
On Wednesday. That's going to be a very...
As Richard warmed to the presence of his brother, he began to reach out with obvious confidence in his own abilities. He even quickly learned to operate a new remote-controlled television set.
Try it. It's good, isn't it?
Good.
Belmont Bay being challenged by Del Sarm. Lester Piggott and Walter Swinburne. Hillel coming now strongly over on the far side. And it's Del Sarm, Belmont Bay and Hillel now have it between them as they race to the furlong pole. Belmont Bay on the near side. Hillel coming there very strongly on the far side. Del Sarm between horses. Racing up towards the line. Belmont Bay on the near side. But now
See if you can change the channel.
And it's French 2000.
Off. Okay? It's okay.
The day was so beautiful outside that Richard and his friends took a short walk to the local park.
You, Richard.
You.
Beautiful.
With the aid of his binoculars, Richard pointed out the sights of Glasgow high on the hill, perhaps daydreaming about future pictures.
In the Glasgow Central Station.
Where?
Glasgow Central Station. Being Muckamucka, railway station, Glasgow Central.
You done any more?
Back at Michael's flat, Richard was eager to share his latest pictures with his friends. When Richard talks about his own pictures, he's active and articulate. Other people have noticed his intonation, his sentence structure, even his word choice varies with his audience.
Very nice.
One is over in a small book.
That's a really unusual sky, Richard.
Oh, that's what I was thinking. Very, very warm winter sky.
Yeah.
Just in the middle degrees, 80s.
Get some more, Richard.
Certainly, when he's talking about his pictures, he is anything but passive and inarticulate.
And the big one off Hawaii, Honolulu.
Oh, you've certainly been enjoying Hawaii, haven't you? When did you draw that one, Richard?
Saturday morning.
Oh, it was only about a week ago then.
Between 1 o'clock to 7 o'clock.
How long did it take you then?
In the middle of the night.
You did that in the middle of the night?
Yes.
Why did you do that?
Before Saturday morning.
Oh, you wanted to get it finished before Saturday?
The big celebration.
I like the way you've got the clouds drifting up the hillsides there, Richard.
Hey.
Yeah. Australia?
That's where you intended. We go that way, the whole connection. If I connect you here in Big Britain. For the right on up in connection.
You've been working hard, Richard.
Yes.
You got any more? Is that the last one?
Then Michael noticed something missing from the Greenville picture.
When did you do that one, Richard?
Yesterday.
Oh, only yesterday?
Yes.
Is it finished?
Finished.
That's not finished. You haven't put your name on it.
No.
Every artist puts a name on their pictures, don't they? Come on, I'll put your name on it. Come on. You want to finish it? Finish this one properly. Put your name on it. Come on. Where's your crayons? What color are you going to
I have discovered from the director of the Occupation Center that 2 years ago, Richard had asked his teachers to teach him to write his name. After 6 months of work, he had succeeded in learning to write only his first name. But no one, until today, had ever encouraged him to sign one of his pictures. As Richard signed both his first and last names for the very first time, it seemed as though he had merely been waiting patiently to be asked. It was a first. Even his father had never known Richard to sign a picture. But Michael believed he could do it and encouraged him to try. As I watched this important new step, I couldn't help wondering if Richard would be encouraged now to begin to sign other pictures.
There we go. That's very good. Finished. Now you're finished. It's properly finished now. You have to do that in all of them now. Okay? Right. Well done.
Almost immediately after this new step, Richard turned his attention to another drawing. To a certain extent, the content of his pictures is determined by the size paper given him by his father. This time, Michael gave him the largest piece of paper he could find, just to see what would happen.
Do you know what you're going to draw?
New Zealand mountain.
New Zealand mountains. What makes you want to draw that?
Me.
For you?
Richard never looks at anything while he draws. He never uses a picture book as a direct guide to his drawings. It seems as though Richard has a clear and precise picture in his mind's eye from the beginning, which he then commits to paper. His technique is revealed, superb concentration, just like any other artist, then a horizon line. The picture elements began to gather in the lower third. He chooses a major field of color. Then the decision where to place the source of the light in the picture. This decision-making will continue throughout the day and into the night as Richard works, as long as it takes to complete the picture. The picture was titled Mountains of New Zealand at 30,000 feet. Richard finished it late at night when he returned to Edinburgh. Like many of his pictures, much detail in the original drawing is now hidden. The mountains lie beneath a heavy layer of clouds.
Well done, son. Well done. That's a beautiful picture, Richard. Well done.
But the major surprise of the celebration was yet to come. After Ted left the room, Richard once again signed his first and last names on this new picture. Ted returned, and his face lit up with astonishment and pride when he learned Richard can now sign all his own pictures. And for Richard, what a difference between a pat on the head and a proper man-to-man handshake. There's incredible range in Richard's pictures, in technique, in subject, and in detail. Richard has keen powers of observation, developed through years of practice, even imitating the great masters such as Rembrandt and Van Gogh. Some early pictures resemble photographs with soft focus edges in black and white or sepia tones. Regardless of the picture's subject, however, there's always a sense of light, its source and its direction. It's impossible to disregard this intense drama between light and darkness. His use of shading is also authoritative. Richard knows that shadows have colors and are not always deep black. He faithfully reproduces the reflections of colors on water and on different surfaces. Still, Richard's main subject is light. He's always been drawn to it. He plays with it. He has moons and bonfires, the night lights of cities and the play of sunlight off the trees, even rainbows, and these indicate his love of light. He draws animals of all kinds, birds and fanciful creatures. His particular interest in his father's construction work is reflected in his many pictures of bridges and boats. An early scrapbook of pictures completed before Richard was 10 years old shows he was drawing a remarkable range of construction equipment from the very beginning. The Polish art professor noticed that despite Richard's apparent lack of knowledge of how the machinery worked, he represented his tractors and bulldozers, cranes and loaders with the precision of a mechanic. Richard noticed the workers too. Is he making a joke or a political statement with his picture of a men working sign in front of a group on strike? By looking closely, I can see individual human characteristics in the workers. It's important to know that Richard's pictures are not simply literal images of what he's seen. He adds and subtracts, rearranges and organizes. One picture, Overnight Stop at Doncaster in particular, reveals his decision-making. In the upper left-hand corner, a building was once drawn, but later covered over. Such arrangement and selection is thinking itself, visual thinking, cognition on a high level. Richard places the viewer in the air, flying with skydivers and in balloons. The viewer is suspended in space besides dirigibles, planes of all sizes and descriptions, and even in space. His use of perspective indicates premeditation and choosing a vantage point. He defines foregrounds and backgrounds with color. But most surprising is his time perspective, like this television studio, with identical moments frozen on television monitors. The best example is Mission Control in Houston. 13 monitors in all, each showing a different view of the same moment, man on the moon. It's clear to me he perceives, he remembers, he thinks, he learns, all part of making art. Richard's responsiveness became evident as Michael, Ted, and I spent an afternoon cataloging Richard's latest titles.
What's the significance of the number?
Well, we start at 1. We started cataloguing.
You started 1?
That's 1701. Did you draw that in Scotland, Richard?
No, maybe started in 1974 in all years of Scotland.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, what's this one, Richard?
No, what?
Malling Harbour. One sort of book.
Oh, you got that one from the book. Could you show us in the book the picture that you got it from? Oh, from the cover here.
The cover. Much the same.
But there's no boats on the cover here.
No, it is in the boat and follow up.
Yeah.
You put in the boats in the harbour. Oh, there it is.
Oh, he combined then, huh?
Wait a minute.
Got some boats from one place and some trees from another,
Yeah.
and put them on there. Yeah.
Oh. Right, what would you like to call it, Richard?
And leave a rest in the harbour.
What? Sunset?
Sunset.
Okay.
Sunset.
Oh, that's a nice one.
Yeah.
Nice one, Richard, isn't it? Lovely.
Richard, where did you get that now? Did you see this or did you get that from the book?
In the book.
From the book? Could I see the picture in the book?
No, the mountain, the whole mountain there, the whole young boat.
Yeah, but you brought the sea a lot closer and you made a little bay there.
In the bay, far distant.
Yeah.
Well, the sky's a lot different too.
The sky's different. Did you climb this mountain to paint?
Yeah, flying the mountain there, down below.
He's given it a whole different perspective. I guess he apparently went to the top of this mountain in his mind's eye to paint the view as if it would be from the top of the mountain. What's the title of this one?
Title, Richard?
Yeah, well, it's a little mountain, a lovely green hill. What a fucking yarn. Yarn on a little rock.
Well, the book calls this the Koolau Range. K-O-O-L-A-U.
Okay.
Koolau.
Yeah, well, not Koolau. That's the name of it.
I don't know how you keep track of all of these. There's one in here on the wall that fascinates me, the one with the fire trucks and the building on fire. Where did that come from, Richard?
My favorite bookshop.
What's it called?
Jane Films.
Yeah, somebody set it afire.
You know, Saturday morning, I found football today, it exploded. Just like football position match. Just like football match.
Richard, you drew some pictures of the Cambodian War.
Cambodian War in 1973.
Yes, were you angry when you drew those pictures?
We were angry because 8 million people have died because of the war to account. It's having the news, it's about news.
You heard it on the news?
It's having the news.
About all those people dying.
A lot of people dying, shooting, bullying, airway.
Yes.
Disgusting.
Oh, it's disgusting.
Death and loss.
So it made you angry.
It made me angry too.
Yes, but these paintings apparently are a release for his anger then that he feels.
I think so, to some extent.
Yes.
But, he'll still continue drawing the events.
Ted, did it affect him intensely when the Pope was shot? How did he respond to that?
What happened knew the Pope shot Pope in the shotgun.
It's absolutely terrified that the Pope was shot simply because he remembered so well, so vividly, that exactly a year ago, a year before shooting, he was talking to Pope in Rome.
It was a very personal thing for him.
It was a very, very personal thing for Richard. Wasn't it, Richard?
Yes, good idea.
You spoke to Pope, didn't you?
Yes, right up. Yeah, right up. It comes from Gravel, don't sue.
Yeah, the Pope actually blessed Richard by
Yes.
putting his hand on his head.
Did he paint anything regarding the Pope?
The Pope being shot?
Richard, have you painted anything about the Pope being shot?
No, never news, never been watched, never been do.
Never drew any picture. I think it's better that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's better to draw happy pictures. Don't you think
Yeah,
so?
happy, very happy picture.
Oh, yes. It's a very good idea.
Good idea.
Yes.
Very good idea.
Richard is an artist with a special vision, responding through his pictures with strong feelings to world events. He continues to express himself most articulately through the medium he knows best, the color crayon. I spent my last moments in Scotland alone with Richard in a walk on the green hill behind his house. Words from Emily Carr, also a lonely and misunderstood artist, came to me. Her words spoke not only for herself, but also to Richard at this point in his journey. Listen. This perhaps is a way to find that thing I long for. Go into the woods and look at the earth crowded with growth, new and old, bursting from their strong roots hidden in the silent live ground. Each seed according to its own kind, expanding, bursting, pushing its way upwards towards the light and air. Each one knowing what to do, each one demanding its own rights on the earth. Feel this growth, the surging upward, this expansion, the pulsing life, all working with the same idea, the same urge to express the God in themselves. Life, 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 which is God. So artists, you too, from the deeps of your soul, let your roots creep forth, gaining strength. Drive them in deep. Take firm hold of the beloved earth mother. Push, push toward the light. Draw deeply from the good nourishment of the earth, but rise into the glory of the light and air and sunshine. Rejoice in your own soil, the place that nurtured you when a helpless seed. Fill it with glory. Be glad. Time has refused to stand still for Richard Wawro. 6 months later, Richard visited the low vision clinic at the University of Houston, where we made a significant discovery. Richard's eyes had been misdiagnosed perhaps for more than 25 years. His lenses, which he had worn since he began drawing, had substantially overcorrected his myopia, giving him a 4-power microscope on his left eye and reducing his focal length to just a few centimeters. This had effectively shut him off from normal contact with the world. Now he uses new drawing glasses. They enable him to use both eyes to achieve the same precision as before the discovery. For normal vision, Richard was fitted by Dr. Joes with a permanent contact on his right eye and nothing on his left one. As Richard puts behind him, one after another, of the limitations that have been placed upon him, one can only wonder what his next step toward the light will be.
Thank you.